Gee, I cannot see, of course, here. Sorry. I think I've got to do this. It's not working. Here. I'm going to have some help maybe, or another brain is needed here to switch my mind somewhere else to do it right. So what was the incantation to do it right? Can't remember. This one? Does it do it right after that? Ah, you're right. You have the right touch. Okay, so I'm going to talk about, so the title, There's No Evidence That, is the clock running for me here? Should I set it up again, or, I don't, anyway, you're going to, okay, I'm going to keep track of my time. So there's no evidence that Othon de la Roche acquired the Shroud of Turin. We just saw a presentation by Michela Marinelli that just said the opposite. But so I'm presenting the opposite of what was just said. So the whole theory of the Othon de la Roche actually has its source into a manuscript, a dissertation that was written in 1714 and is kept in Besançon. And so the claim is based on this manuscript, and the manuscript is called Manuscript 826. And the Municipal Library of Besançon. So new information, I will present new information. Actually, it's an information that I took from Andrea Nicolotti, and information that also I have about that dissertation. The other thing I'm going to talk about is indeed the coffer that was mentioned by Michela, and supposedly at the castle of Ray-sur-Seine, there is, in France, there is a coffer that Othon would have used to store the shroud, or at least to send it to France, to store it in the... I would say that there's absolutely no proof of that, and there's no family tradition that sustain or support that claim. And actually, there's a very simple proof for that. The last thing I'm going to talk about is the letter of Theodore, Comnenus Ducas, or also some people call him Theodore Angelus, but it's uncommon to call him Angelus. A letter that he supposedly wrote to Pope Innocent III. A lot of things have been said about this letter. I think, first of all, that it's simple to say that the letter is doubtful for simple reasons. And I will just present these simple arguments I have, because we can go into very complex argument about this letter, which I will not go through. But I have a simple argument to say, well, this letter is doubtful compared to many other manuscripts that we can consult. You look at the inventories of the Sainte-Chapelle. These documents have traces of centuries. We know where they were. They're very authentic. We're pretty sure of that. You look into another document called Pour savoir la vérité. This document we have access to. We have traces in the archive of the National Archive of France. And so there are many manuscripts for which we have solid foundation for them. We don't doubt them. But that one, well, it's surprising the way it came up, and the whole thing looks very strange. It's a strange letter. It's doubtful. So who was Othon de la Roche? I think I'm going to go quickly into that. I think everybody heard who is Othon de la Roche. Othon de la Roche, we're not sure when he died. We don't even know when he was born. But he was a knight. He participated in the Fourth Crusade, and he was at Constantinople in 1204 when the whole city was taken by the Latin. The French and the Venetian took over the city, and so he was there. And also Othon was at the Blacherna church in Constantinople, where indeed Robert de Clary reports to have seen a cidoine, a shroud. So people put these two things together and say, oh, Othon was there at the Black Elm, and there was also the Sidoine, so maybe he stole it or something like this. So that's where it starts. And Othon also supposedly, that's the claim, supposedly received the Shroud of Christ. Did he steal it? Was it given to him? But anyway, this is the claim for Othon de la Roche. Othon de la Roche also became Lord of Ray because he married Isabelle de Ray. And that's how the castle of Ray-sur-Seine is connected to Othon. But probably Othon never set a foot there in his life because he probably died in Greece. The theory of Othon de la Roche has been, or the thesis of Othon de la Roche has been criticized by many people. For example, Paul Vignon, who actually thought that the Shroud of Turin was authentic, points out that there's no trace of the Shroud with an image that exists before 1523 in Besançon. Now, I mentioned Besançon because what we're going to see is that this theory, the thesis of Othon de la Roche, starts in Besançon. Doesn't start with the Shroud of Turin. Starts with Besançon. Paul Deguy also wrote 60 pages, to attack this thesis, and it's pretty lengthy. It's in French. There's also Gian Maria Zacconi. He wrote a paper about the manuscript, the manuscript 826. He published that, and he said, well, everything looks very doubtful. If we published that in 1997. There's also Andrea Nicolotti, who wrote an entire book in French that talks about the Chevalier de Othon de la Roche, and was published 2 years ago, 2015, and it's a complete book on the subject of Othon de la Roche. I don't want to praise too much Andrea Nicolotti, but he's against the authenticity of the Shroud of Turin. But I think this book is pretty on the mark. It's very, very well documented, meticulously researched, and actually he did find out the author of the first dissertation of the manuscript of 826, so the manuscript that says that Othon de la Roche acquired the Shroud. And he identified the author because the manuscript is not, the author did not sign his name on it. So that was a good find in 2015. So the manuscript 826, Besançon, if you don't know where it is, it's in France, of course, and it's close to Switzerland. At some point it was invaded by the German. So this is where is Besançon. This is the city of Besançon. And you can see on the top there, you see it's surrounded by the river, the Doubs. And one of the cathedral of St. John Cathedral, is actually near the little place where you see kind of a forest. And this is where the people would gather to watch, to see the Shroud of Besançon. The Shroud of Besançon, so the manuscript is in this library. If you go, there's a street called the Street of the Library, la Rue de la Bibliothèque, and this is where the manuscript is stored. This is the manuscript 826. There's 2 dissertations in that manuscript. There's a dissertation against the authenticity of the Shroud of Besançon, and there's a manuscript for the authenticity of the Shroud of Besançon. They're both are done together. This is the archive decided to do that. The interesting thing is that the dissertation against the authenticity of the Shroud of Besançon was published, completely transcribed and published in 1831. But strangely, the dissertation for the authenticity of the Shroud of Besançon, which supports the theory of Othon de la Roche, was only published in 2015. And actually, I skip. I'm just going to say that. So I published actually the transcription in a book. I just mentioned that with Russ, and so it's the first time somebody can read the entire dissertation for the thesis of Othon de la Roche. And actually, someone has to read it completely. It's in French, but you have to read it to sense that the person who wrote that doesn't have a very critical mind, is very kind of naive, and obviously we're going to see that. Obviously, falsify the references. He's actually trying to prove that Othon de la Roche did receive a shroud, but he's falsifying the references that he tried to acquire. So the dissertation for the authenticity of the Shroud of Besançon, we're going to talk about that. So there's no explicit author written on that dissertation. And there's also no date, but it's easy to actually, if you read the document, you realize that, oh, you can do a little calculation because the author says, oh, 508 years ago, Othon de la Roche received the shroud in 1205. So if you do the calculation, it's 1714. So the writer is writing this in 1714. André Nicolotti was able to find the author. It's Pierre-Joseph Dunot. He's a Jesuit. He died in 1725, and what's very interesting is that this author, Pierre-Joseph Dunot, wrote many other historical theory, and they're very fanciful. For example, I think he tried to prove that the city of Antre is well known to be in Switzerland, but he tried to prove that it was in Franche-Comté, based on some ridiculous argument. So this author, wrote the theory of the thesis of Othon de la Roche. He's actually the one that actually created this thesis. And all the references, we're going to see that, of a shroud received or kept by Othon de la Roche are either falsified or untraceable. There is no foundation for what he's saying. This is the two books. Mine is on the right, Le Shroud de Besançon, published in February 2015. You have the entire transcription of the first dissertation. You can read it, and there's also comments. There's the book of André Nicolotti. It's harder to get. I don't think you can find it on Amazon. It's published by, actually I forgot the publisher. It's Franche-Comté or Franche-Bourgogne. Franche-Bourgogne, Édition Franche-Bourgogne. It's a bit difficult to get, but if you search on the web, there's a way to order it. So what does Pierre-Joseph Dunot says? So at some point, he has to show references. He has to say, well, I read the following book, and I did find that Othon de la Roche received the shroud of Christ when he was in Constantinople. So he has the following references. There are 6 references. The old cartulary of the Abbey of Assay. Actually, no shroud is mentioned. We have copies of it. We don't have the entire cartulary, but we have good part of it. And when we search it, there is no shroud mentioned there. Okay, so we don't know where he found this thing, but the author, Pierre-Joseph Dunot, we don't know. The other one is the old title of the Abbey of Charity. Well, we don't have this document anymore. Untraceable, we cannot find it. The next one, the genealogy in Italian of Pierre de Luxembourg, untraceable document. We don't even know what he's talking about here, which document he's talking about. After that, he referenced the Chronicle of the monk Alberic when he mentions the miracle that happened in the family of Othon de la Roche. No shroud mentioned there. We have the entire document. No shroud occurred in that document. And then he mentioned the history of the 5th, actually he made a mistake, it's the 4th crusade and the conquest of Constantinople by Montaner. Untraceable author, and we cannot find this author anywhere. The next one is Jérôme de Turita. We cannot also find this author of the proper century. We did find somebody, I think it's Gian Maria Zacconi, did locate someone who has a name similar to Turita, but it's not even the right century, 17th century. So we cannot trace that author. So we cannot trace these 6 references. And just to show you, so an historian, when you reference some text, when you reference some manuscript, you at least, if it took a long time to find this reference, you take an excerpt from that manuscript and you put it in your own representation, on your own argument. And he did not do that. So here's the manuscript, and at some point he says, "Le suaire tomba en partage." So he does say, okay, Othon de la Roche received the shroud. And notice that we are on page 39. I put A because we are at the top of the page. And then on the same page right away, he has 3 references, but they follow each other. He does not, explain what he does find there. He does not give us the text. He does not quote the text. So, and then the next 3 again, 3 references quickly, but no text. So we cannot understand what he does read. He did read. So this author looks like he's making up a story. That essentially is what is going on here. So we can see right now that the first dissertation of the manuscript 826 does not give us any solid foundation for Autant de l'Arrache to have received any shroud. So this was also presented by Jack Marquard. Eventually, François Chamard, the Dominican François Chamard, takes the thesis of Autant de l'Arrache, modifies it in a funny way where the shroud of Besançon is stolen. So by the way, I didn't say it, but when Pierre-Joseph Dunot is trying to prove that the shroud of Besançon is authentic, he's trying to prove it in 1714. When in 1714, everybody knows that the shroud that was in Besançon was a painting, that's for sure. So he's trying to prove something that everybody now knows is wrong. So he was trying to prove something wrong. Because the Shroud of Turin, of course, was in Turin in 1714. So on top of that, François Chamard reused this thesis and then moves it to the Shroud of Turin. And he moves it in a way that he constructs a theory that is just speculation. So trying to take that theory of Autant de l'Arrache and moving it from the Shroud of Besançon to the Shroud of Turin is going nowhere, essentially. I just want to say a few words about the dissertation against the authenticity of the Shroud of Besançon. It's actually the people who wrote that, I won't identify here in detail the author, but the authors are written, there are 3 authors of that dissertation. And what's very interesting is that in that dissertation you can read that it's written in the 18th century, and they actually compare the Shroud of Turin with the Shroud of Besançon. And these people, they have access to the Shroud of Besançon. They can look at it. And they say, essentially, I won't read everything here, they essentially say, if you have an authentic shroud, you should actually see a 3D information in it. 18th century. So these people knew that an authentic shroud should have 3D information. That's 100 years before Yves Delage. That's 250 years ago. It's a quite impressive analysis that they did of the Shroud of Besançon and the Shroud of Turin. Just to show you a few pictures of this is the Saint Cathedral, the Cathedral of Saint John in Besançon. There's one core on one side, and there's another one, well, I'm going to talk about the balcony. So the balcony, you can see a balcony here on the tower, and this is where they were showing the Shroud of Besançon. So the Shroud of Besançon was shown for 3 centuries, and there were even more people going to see this shroud than the Shroud of Turin. At some point, there were 30,000 people in the city. And Louis XIV sent a letter to the bishop, and he said, stop the presentation of the Shroud of Besançon because the German could actually invade the city by going to see the Shroud of Besançon. So anyway, it was shown here from the top of the tower there. You see another balcony here, 2 balconies. There were 4 balconies, and they were going around like this and showing the Shroud of Besançon. So it was quite far, it was quite high, so you could not really see it closely. And this is the core, inside the Cathedral of Saint John. You have a representation of the Shroud of Besançon. As you can see, they show a small suaire. So so this is an example where if you base the size of something on artistic representation, you can be quite wrong because the Shroud of Besançon was much bigger. So now the castle of Ray-sur-Seine. This is the castle. This is where it is in France. It's actually not far from Besançon, not too far again from Switzerland. So there's a coffer there. There's a coffer, and that coffer, supposedly, this is what is claimed on this tag there, written there. It says, this was used to bring back the Shroud of Christ from Greece to France, essentially. So I will show that actually, the castle now does not belong to the Salvette family anymore. The castle belongs to the Department of Haute-Saône. So it's becoming a public property. And so actually I visited the inside of the castle recently, and the tag has been removed. The tag that you see there has been removed, and they are about to do a study of the wood and try to date it. And actually the date is supposed to be published soon and this month. But all the people I contacted trying to find out where it comes from, who put it there, we don't know. And probably it was put there in the castle around 1962. That's our... so I talked actually even to the librarian of the castle, Jean Richardot. So there was a librarian there working with the last owner, who was Diane de Salverte. Diane de Salverte died last year in October. Jean Richardot told me that nobody knows in the family who put the coffer there. So there's no obvious family tradition, that would support that this is authentic. Although some people write that, there's a family tradition that support the existence, the authenticity of the coffer. No such thing exists, actually. And if you read the book, the history book written by Hubert de Salverte, Hubert de Salverte was the father of the last owner, Diane Regina de Salverte. So Hubert de Salverte, in 1936, write the following: Othon brought back from the siege of the siege of Constantinople 2 important relics of the true cross. One is still preserved at the Ray-sur-Seine church, but some people also want him to have in his part the famous Holy Shroud of Turin. So, and then he referenced the work of the Dominican François Chamard. So the owner, or almost the owner, he was the husband of the owner of the castle, says other people say that Othon de la Roche brought back the shroud. So in the family, there's absolutely no knowledge of that, actually. So I think this disproves, and even he does not mention a coffer here. If there was a coffer that is supposed to have contained the shroud coming from Othon, he would not have written that. That's not possible. He would contradict himself. So there was no coffer, no known coffer at the castle that could have contained the shroud that was there in 1936. So it's only a very recent the coffer was added recently, probably in 1962 or 63 in the castle. Finally, so I have 5 minutes, 2 minutes, 10 minutes? Oh, I'm going faster. So the letter of Theodore Angelus Comnenus Ducas. So now I come to my last point, which is that it is doubtful. So this letter was discussed already by Michaela and Michaela mostly. And so the letter supposedly it's a letter that was written by Theodore Comnenus Ducas to Pope Innocent III about the Shroud of Christ in Athens. And the main question now is it authentic? So just to give a perspective here about the theory of Othon de la Roche and also the theory that the shroud was in Athens, let's say that this is the only element that could sustain that, could sustain the fact that the shroud of Christ was in Athens, but it's a very weak one. It's the last one, because what we just saw, the theory of Othon de la Roche spread from a false dissertation, and so this is only probably the last thread of that theory that can sustain it. And I would say it's very weak, because here's my simple argument. So first of all, this letter was presented in 1981 by Pasquale Rinaldi at a conference. I was in Bologna in Italy, and supposedly written by Theodore Angelus Comnenus Ducas in 1205 in Rome. The first problem with that, this was mentioned I think by Jack Marquardt, is that Theodore Ducas, Comnenus Ducas, rarely called himself Angelus in those years. He would call him Ducas, and the reason is that the name Angelus was a bad thing for him, because a lot of bad things happen in the branch of the family of the Angelus family, and so he would call him Ducas, which seems to be, looks more prominent and more wealthy than Angelus. Angelus was a failure branch of the Comnenus, and the Ducas was very wealthy. So he called himself Ducas, not Angelus. and 1205. So it's very surprising to read a letter from him calling himself Angelus. This is the first thing that appears odd. This letter was found in the Santa Caterina Church in Napoli. The letter is supposedly a copy made in 1859 by Bishop Benedetto d'Acquisto, and the original would have been lost in 1943. And also this letter is part of our cartulary. It's not actually a codex, it's a cartulary. A cartulary is simply a kind of simply a bunch of letters or documents not even bind together. And so anybody can insert anything in there. It's easy to create a fake here, and then when you put that there. And so it's not bind with something else, so it's very difficult to, and we have a copy now, so it's very difficult to assess the authenticity of that document. So of course the letter says that the Shroud of Christ would have been stolen by the French and kept at Athens, Auton de la Roche. So then the main problem with this is that, who's Theodore Comnenus Ducas? Essentially, Theodore Comnenus Ducas in 1205, he's actually about 20 years old. He could be up to 25 years old, so he's kind of young, and he's actually serving Theodore I Lascaris, who considered himself the emperor of Besançon, because this is after the sack of Constantinople, but all the Byzantine army retreated towards Nicaea, and Lecapenus considered himself to be the real Byzantine empire. And so Theodore, who is very young, is serving Lascaris. So it's very strange that Theodore would go to Rome, talk about one relic that was stolen, while at the same time they're battling to get back the empire, the Byzantium Empire. That's very strange to me. It's why would he go there and spend so much time to do that when you have much? It has lots of demand in terms of fighting and or maintaining the empire and Nicaea. So that appears strange. So the other point I want to make is that, so I already make that point here. The name of Ducas, the name Angelus was not something that he would use in the letter. He would not use Angelus, he would use Ducas. So, and also Theodore becomes the ruler of Epirus in 1215. So you can see that, well, it's 1205 to 1215, there's 10 years, but you can see how ambitious this man is. I mean, this is not someone who would, I think, go around and try to find a relic, one single relic. And here's, again, some points that makes it doubtful that this letter is authentic, is that we cannot trace the existence of the letter from any archives over a long period of time. This I mentioned a bit at the beginning. Most manuscripts, when you try to certify them or authenticate them, you have traces of them in archives. We have no traces of that letter. So if you go to the Vatican archive, we don't have traces of it. It doesn't prove it's not authentic. You don't find it in the Vatican archive, but we have no traces of it. We have no traces of it anywhere, except in this copy. And also Pope Innocent III wrote many letters to Auton. So if the Pope saw that request, how come he wrote so many times to Auton and never mentioned it? Never mentioned that he stole what happened to that shroud? He wrote about 10 letters, the Pope Innocent III to Auton. Never mentioned it. He actually talked about many things. You did this, you did that, Auton, you're bad, and he never mentioned the shroud. So again, no traces of anything there. And to me, the letter, yes, it appears to be a fake that is based on Auton de la Roche. In 1981 or even in 1859 when it was copied, either way you look at it, the best way to create a fake is, of course, to take a theory that you think is solid and you take that theory. And those years, I think it was not clear whether or not it was a good theory. But I think Auton de la Roche, based on the manuscript 826, we can see that there's no solid foundation there. So Summary: the dissertation of Pierre-Joseph Dunot in 1714 has no valid foundation. And it's really from there that the thesis of Autant de la Roche starts. And it is disseminated by many people. And then the presence of the Shroud of Christ in Athens or Greece has no solid foundation. When I say that, is that, well, the only thing that remains is the letter of Theodore, for which, if we're, I think, honest, compared to many other manuscripts that we have, is very weak in terms of authenticity. And there's no family tradition of a shroud coffer at the castle of Ray-sur-Seine. I think if you look at the historical documents, there's no tradition of that coffer there. And most people around the castle say, except the family themselves now, they're all almost gone. They say no, it's not the true coffer that could have contained a shroud. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And he's early, so thank you so much. And it's any questions? We got time for a question right here.
Just a quick one, Mario. Dukas would seem to have an interest in writing because the Pope could influence his opponents.
That's true. Of course.
Why don't you repeat the question?
Yeah, the question is, if I understand correctly, Dukas wrote to the Pope, and indeed, writing to the Pope could have done something to influence the person who had it, which was Othon. He said Dukas does not name Othon in his letter, by the way. He just says it is in Athens. But so your question is, it's a good thing that.
The Pope could influence his opponents in Constantinople. He could say, "You scoundrels, you're making this." He could add.
So he could write to Othon.